Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're immersing ourselves in the world of Dame Agatha Christie.
And we're looking beyond, the cozy reputation of the English village murder.
Right, we're analyzing the woman who was, and still is, a global commercial titan. I mean, she is the best-selling fiction writer of all time.
A feat that's only surpassed by, William Shakespeare and the Bible? The scale is just,
Yeah,
it's truly astonishing.
it really is.
Especially when you consider she worked mostly within genre fiction. Our source material gives a very comprehensive, sometimes intimate look into her life.
Into her methods, her career.
And the mechanics that let her work capture, literally, billions of readers around the world.
Absolutely. We've gathered information on everything from her very unusual home education to her wartime service.
And that fascinating link between her later life in archaeology and her ability to construct the perfect plot.
So our mission for you, the listener, is not just to run through her biography. It's to absorb the critical insights that explain how she achieved this dominance.
We're focusing on the structures of her genius. And crucially, we're also going to spend some dedicated time unpacking the single most dramatic and mysterious event of her life.
Her great disappearance in 1926. Okay, let's unpack this and start with the genesis of the Queen of Crime.
So Agatha Mary Clarissa Miller was born in 1890 in Torquay, Devon.
And this was into a wealthy, upper-middle-class family.
Yes, and perhaps importantly, a cosmopolitan one. Her father was an American expatriate, and her mother, Clara, was English. So this environment gave her a stable, comfortable foundation.
But her early education was anything but conventional.
Not at all. That's a key detail. She was largely homeschooled, which was, a bit odd for her family's social standing at the time.
And her mother had some very specific ideas about her learning.
She did. Clara had this rather curious belief that Agatha shouldn't be taught to read until she was 8 years old.
It's like a moment of literary rebellion before her career even started.
It really was. The sources suggest this rule was meant to sort of nurture her imagination, but it completely backfired.
How so?
Well, just driven by her own intense curiosity, Christie was teaching herself to read by the age of 4.
Wow. So that early self-directed appetite for learning is critical.
It is. She didn't just passively read. She devoured authors like Edith Nesbit, Edward Lear, Lewis Carroll. She was absorbing narrative structures and, interestingly, also developed a real love for arithmetic and music.
But that secure foundation of her childhood, it didn't last.
No, it shattered pretty early on. In 1901, when she was just 11, her father died.
And this was a critical turning point.
A huge one. While the family was still considered well off, his death exposed these underlying financial problems. And the sources note it really marked a sharp decline in their stability.
That kind of shift from security to financial strain must have colored her view of the world.
You can see it in her work, money and inheritance. They so often become the central pragmatic motive for murder in her novels.
Right.
But despite the financial pressure, her mother still made sure she got some sort of finishing school education.
This included time in Paris, didn't it?
Yes, in Parisian pensionnats or boarding schools. The focus there was rigorous training in voice and piano.
And she actually pursued a professional performing career for a while, right? Which seems completely at odds with her later reputation as this quiet, private writer.
She did, for a time, but it wasn't to be. She eventually gave up that ambition.
Why was that?
The sources are pretty candid about it. She lacked both the temperament for the stage and, frankly, the exceptional level of talent needed to be a professional musician. It was a disappointment, but it cleared the path for her true calling.
It's fascinating how often a change of path like that forces a great artist into their destined career.
And her early writing attempts had nothing to do with crime.
Right, she was just experimenting.
Yes. She wrote her first short story, The House of Beauty, which dealt with these dark, almost gothic themes of madness and dreams.
And a novel set in Cairo.
That's right, Snow Upon the Desert. Both were rejected multiple times when she submitted them under pseudonyms. This is a tough start.
But the real catalyst for her career wasn't some artistic awakening. It was a geopolitical catastrophe.
World War I.
Yeah.
Exactly. She married Archibald Archie Christie, a Royal Artillery officer, in 1914, and it was her wartime service that gave her the very specific lethal expertise that would become her literary signature.
All right, this is where we need to spend some time because this is where the genius starts. She wasn't just, folding bandages, was she?
Not at all. She started as an unpaid voluntary aid detachment nurse in Torquay. She put in over 3,400 hours of service, which shows incredible commitment.
But the crucial move came later.
Yes, in 1917, she qualified as an apothecary's assistant,
Okay.
basically a pharmacist's dispenser. She was hands-on with dangerous substances for, pretty modest pay.
So we're talking about real, practical, sustained experience handling high-grade chemicals and medicines.
Which included poisons.
Precisely.
And this gave her a deep, technical, and clinically accurate knowledge of toxicology. She knew everything. Dosages, symptoms, latency periods, and, most importantly for a writer, the untraceable nature of many poisons.
And this knowledge became her defining element.
It's her signature. It features in well over half of her novels, starting right away with the murder in the mysterious affair at Styles. It let her build plots that were medically plausible, but incredibly difficult for the fictional police to solve.
So, armed with this deadly toolkit, she wrote The Mysterious Affair at Styles in 1916. Tell us about the birth of Hercule Poirot.
Poirot was inspired directly by the Belgian refugees she saw in Torquay during the war.
She envisioned him as this meticulous, almost fastidious detective.
Exactly, famously described with magnificent mustaches and a head exactly the shape of an egg. He was a completely new type of detective for English fiction, an exiled foreigner relying on psychology, not just physical clues.
The book was accepted, but the contract was notoriously bad.
It was a huge misstep, and one she learned from painfully. Her first publisher, the Bodley Head. The agreement was, well, exploitative.
What was so bad about it?
It locked her into her next 5 books with them. And crucially, they kept the subsidiary rights, including the very lucrative American rights. She got exceptionally poor royalty rates.
So she made very little money from her initial success.
Almost nothing. It forced her, later in life, to become an incredibly shrewd negotiator about her own intellectual property.
That explains her later mastery of her theatrical rights. After Poirot, she introduced another detective team.
She did. The Secret Adversary in 1922 introduced Tommy and Tuppence Beresford. Young, adventurous.
And it earned her a modest £50, still not exactly getting rich.
No, but it was establishing her as a writer with range.
And before she settled into the life of a major novelist, she had this fascinating global adventure that, again, just contradicts that image of the staid English author.
In 1922, she and Archie joined a 10-month around-the-world promotional tour for the British Empire exhibition.
This took them everywhere.
South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, Canada. It's where she first encountered these truly exotic locations that would later feature so heavily in her work.
But the truly surprising detail for me is what happened in Hawaii.
It's a wonderful, humanizing detail. They were introduced to surfing.
Standing up.
Yes. After trying it prone in South Africa, they went to Waikiki and became among the first known Britons to successfully surf standing up. They were so captivated by it, they extended their stay by 3 months just to practice.
That is real dedication. It takes immense core strength and balance. She didn't just try it, she committed to it.
She wasn't casual about anything she enjoyed. She later called surfing one of the most perfect physical pleasures I have known. It just paints a picture of a woman far more dynamic and adventurous than the one we usually imagine.
We now turn to the event that remains the single biggest real-life mystery of her existence, the disappearance of 1926. This was a period of intense emotional distress, so we should approach it with care.
Absolutely. The context is crucial. Christie was already navigating a deep depression. Her mother, Clarissa, had died in April 1926, and she was struggling profoundly with that grief.
And her marriage to Archie was also falling apart.
Yes. The immediate trigger came in August 1926, when Archie told her he wanted a divorce. He'd fallen in love with a younger woman named Nancy Neal,
who was a friend of the man who led their world tour.
Yes. So the stability she had known was just completely gone.
The final dramatic night was December 3rd, 1926.
The couple had a sharp quarrel. Late that evening, Christie disappeared from their home, which they had, with some irony, named Styles.
After her first novel.
And she left no note, no explanation. It launched one of the most famous manhunts in British history.
The investigation started the next morning with a shocking discovery.
Her car, a Morris Cowley, was found abandoned in Surrey above a chalk quarry. Inside, they found her expired driving license and some clothes.
And the location immediately fueled some terrible speculation.
It did. People immediately feared she'd taken her own life, and the search focused on a nearby beauty spot, the silent pool, thinking she might have drowned herself.
The press went into an absolute frenzy.
It became an international headline event. It even made the front page of the New York Times. A private tragedy turned into a public spectacle.
The scale of the search itself was just extraordinary for the time.
It was a massive mobilization. Over 1,000 police officers, 15,000 civilian volunteers, and even several airplanes were deployed to search the area. The entire nation seemed to be involved.
And even famous figures got involved in some strange ways.
Exactly. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, a keen believer in spiritualism, took one of her gloves to a spirit medium to try and get a clue to her location. It just shows the level of desperation to solve the mystery.
So after 11 days of this frantic searching, she was found on December 14th.
She was located 184 miles north of her home at a spa hotel in Harrogate, Yorkshire. A musician at the hotel recognized her from the newspaper reports and called the police.
And the details of her registration there are perhaps the most cryptic part of the whole affair.
They're deeply revealing. She had checked in as Mrs. Tressa Neal, using the exact surname of her husband's lover, and said she was from Cape Town, SA.
And she'd just been acting like a normal guest.
Reading, playing the piano. Once she was found, her family immediately shielded her from the public.
So once she was safe, the question became, what was the medical explanation for this?
The official finding from 2 doctors was a diagnosis of an unquestionable, genuine loss of memory.
A fugue state.
That's the usual interpretation. A dissociative fugue state, a rare condition linked to severe trauma where a person can wander off and even assume a new temporary identity.
But that finding didn't satisfy everyone. Biographers are still split on what really happened. There are 3 main theories, right?
That's right. The first theory sticks to the diagnosis, a genuine trauma-induced dissociative fugue. The evidence is the intense grief, the shock of the divorce, and the fact that she used the lover's name.
Suggesting some kind of deep psychological conflict.
Exactly. A literal flight from her identity.
The second theory is much more cynical.
It suggests she planned the event, maybe to embarrass Archie, or even to make it look like he'd harmed her. Proponents of this point to the use of Nancy Neal's name as being too specific for a true fugue state.
But if that's true, she must have severely underestimated the public reaction.
The international melodrama.
Yes.
Which brings us to the third theory.
A kind of middle ground.
Championed by her biographer, Laura Thompson. It suggests she had a nervous breakdown, that she was conscious, but not in emotional control. She wasn't plotting. She was just collapsing under the emotional weight of it all.
And regardless of the cause, the public reaction was quite hostile, wasn't it?
It was devastating for her. Many suspected it was a publicity stunt or an attempt to frame Archie. The fact she was found safe in a spa hotel, it just undercut a lot of public sympathy.
What's most revealing about the toll this took is the silence she maintained afterwards.
It speaks volumes. In her autobiography, which is incredibly detailed, she makes absolutely no mention of the disappearance. None at all.
Which just shows how painful and humiliating that period must have been.
It does. She got a divorce in 1928, but she very shrewdly kept the Christie surname for her writing career. She understood the brand she had already built.
After the crisis and the divorce, Christie consciously chose to rebuild her life through travel.
She needed that change of scene, a break from England. In 1928, she took the Orient Express to Istanbul and then on to Baghdad.
A journey that would prove very fruitful for future plots.
Immensely. And on a later trip, she met her enduring partner, Max Mallowan.
An archaeologist.
Yes, she met him in 1930 on a dig in Iraq. He was 13 years her junior, but they shared this deep intellectual connection. They married later that year, and it was a true-life partnership that lasted until her death.
And her role as an archaeological wife wasn't just as a companion. She was a working contributor.
This is critical to understanding her plotting genius. She went with him on annual expeditions, 3 to 4 months a year, to major sites in Syria and Iraq. Nineveh, Nimrud.
And she wasn't just sitting in the shade.
Not at all. She was an indispensable part of the team. She took detailed photographic records, developed them, cleaned and recorded delicate artifacts.
She developed a particular skill in restoring ceramics.
And think about that work. She would take thousands of shattered fragments of ancient pottery and meticulously piece them back together to reconstruct the original object.
That sounds exactly like her literary method.
Precisely. It's a direct link. Her skill in piecing together shattered ceramics, finding patterns in fragments, it perfectly mirrors her process of piecing together a shattered narrative, a murder mystery, from seemingly unrelated clues. Her plots are essentially literary excavations.
And this immersion in the Middle East gave her the authentic background for some of her most iconic works.
It completely changed the scope of her novels. This is where we get Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile, and the incredibly detailed Murder in Mesopotamia.
Domestically, she and Max established a new life.
They split their time between London and the country. They bought Winterbrook House in Oxfordshire in 1934, which became her main writing base, and they also had the Greenway Estate in Devon, which she used as a setting for books like Dead Man's Folly.
World War II brought her back to her roots, professionally speaking.
That's right. She took on pharmacy work again at University College Hospital in London. This was invaluable because it forced her to update her knowledge of new drugs and their potential for misuse. It kept her fiction medically current.
And this updated knowledge famously had a significant real-world impact much later on.
It's a truly remarkable story. Her novel, The Pale Horse, from 1961, featured a very specific poisoning using thallium.
A heavy metal.
Yes. She described the symptoms, hair loss, neuropathy, with such clinical accuracy that in 1977, medical staff in Britain were able to diagnose a real-life case of thallium poisoning just because they remembered her book.
So her fiction literally saved a life.
By acting as an unsung toxicology textbook. It's incredible.
Another fascinating wartime story involves British intelligence services thinking she might have been a spy.
It really speaks to how well-known her work was. MI5 investigated her in 1941 after a character named Major Bletchley appeared in her thriller, N or M.
Because they feared she'd tipped off the public about Bletchley Park, the top-secret code-breaking center.
They were deeply concerned. The alarm was only settled after she explained the truth to a friend, the codebreaker Dilly Knox. She said she'd been stuck on a train at Bletchley Station and, out of pure frustration, decided to name one of my least lovable characters after it.
So it was a random act of petty revenge that accidentally caused a national security scare.
Exactly.
Her later life, of course, brought increasing public and royal recognition.
Her status was undeniable. She was appointed Commander of the Order of the British Empire, a CBE, in 1956, and then promoted to Dame Commander, the DBE, in 1971.
In her final years, though, there's a somber note in the sources about her health.
Yes. Researchers, using textual analysis of her writing, have hypothesized that she may have begun to develop Alzheimer's, or another form of dementia, between 1971 and 1974. Her final novel was Postern of Fate in 1973.
A heartbreaking decline. She died in 1976.
At age 85 from natural causes. The recognition was immediate. 2 West End theaters dimmed their lights in her honor, a tribute usually reserved for royalty.
Okay, let's delve into the core of her genius, the detectives and the mechanics of the crime. Hercule Poirot. He appeared in an astounding 33 novels and over 50 short stories.
But we know her feelings toward him soured over time.
She found him tedious, right?
Profoundly so. By the late 1930s, she was calling him insufferable, and by the 1960s, an egocentric creep. It's a fascinating tension, the author despising the character who made her famous.
But she was too smart to kill him off prematurely.
She was a shrewd businesswoman, but she did write his final case, Curtain, during the Blitz, and had it locked in a bank vault.
As an insurance policy for her daughter.
Exactly. In case she didn't survive the war. It was finally published in 1975 when her health was failing.
And the literary world marked his death as if he were a real person.
That's how influential he was. He became the first fictional character ever to get an obituary on the front page of the New York Times.
Let's turn to her other great creation, Miss Jane Marple. Where did she come from?
She was introduced in 1927. She's the antithesis of Poirot, a seemingly gentle, elderly spinster. Her genius wasn't forensics, but a deep, almost cynical understanding of human nature derived from village life.
She solved crimes by drawing analogies to petty local gossip.
Exactly. And Christie confirmed Marple was based on her step-grandmother and her Ealing cronies. These women, she said, always expected the worst of everyone and everything and were, with almost frightening accuracy, usually proved right.
And the ultimate fan question is always why Poirot and Marple never appear together.
Christie was firm on this. She said Poirot, the complete egoist, would simply not like being taught his business by an elderly spinster lady. Their egos and methods would clash too severely.
And it's important to note the characters live on today.
The estate supports news stories. Sophie Hannah has been writing new Poirot mysteries, and there's a new collection of Marple stories by various authors. The brand power is just immense.
Let's talk about the mechanics of her success. Her plots are renowned for being possible, logical, and always new. What does that mean?
It's about fair play with the reader. She'd present an apparently impossible situation, a locked room, a perfect alibi, and then, through meticulous reasoning, show how it was the only thing that could have happened. The trick is always hidden in plain sight.
Her settings reinforce this closed box mechanism.
Absolutely. The circle of potential suspects is always closed and intimate, whether it's a quaint village or a train trapped in a snowstorm. This forces you, the reader, to focus on a small group.
And her trademark is the climax.
The ceremonial gathering of the suspects. The detective brings everyone together and walks them through the deductive path, step by step, until the final dramatic reveal.
When she created a villain, what was the most frequent motive?
Almost always money. Her crimes are driven by pragmatic greed, not sociopathic enjoyment. This grounds the plots in a way that feels both shocking and somehow relatable.
Since we discussed her pharmacy background, let's talk about poisons. They feature in over half her novels. Why were they the perfect weapon for her?
They were ideal because they allowed the killer to maintain distance, and the symptoms often mimic natural diseases. It fit her desire for plausibility perfectly.
Can you give some examples?
She frequently used arsenic, whose symptoms resemble food poisoning. Aconite can be mistaken for a sudden heart attack. Digitalis, a heart medicine, is particularly insidious because in small doses it builds up over time and death looks entirely natural. Of course, thallium, as we mentioned, with its confusing, debilitating symptoms.
But her clues weren't always so complex. They were often mundane.
That was the brilliance of her misdirection. A wrongly dated calendar, a misplaced coffee cup, a specific arrangement of wax flowers. These are the tiny overlooked details, the pottery fragments that let the detective complete the picture.
The great crime writer P.D. James noticed a pattern in Christie's work.
James observed that Christie often made the unlikeliest character the guilty party, the unassuming doctor, the kindly aunt. But Christie, with her characteristic wit, actually mocked this observation in her foreword to Cards on the Table, warning readers that this is not that kind of book.
She loved playing with the rules she helped establish.
Exactly.
Two works stand out as structurally revolutionary. First, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd from 1926.
This novel is legendary. It was voted the best crime novel ever in 2013, specifically for its highly original trick. The narrator, the doctor who is Poirot's Watson-like sidekick, is revealed to be the murderer.
Which completely broke the trust between author and reader.
There's a massive literary risk, but she crafted the test with such precision that every statement the narrator makes is technically true. It's his omissions, what he chooses not to tell you, that hide the deception.
The second is, And Then There Were None from 1939, her biggest commercial success, and it violates even more conventions.
This book is chilling. It strips away all the comforts of the genre. There's no active detective, no interviews, and no final gathering because the entire cast is murdered by the end.
It takes the closed society mystery to its most extreme conclusion.
Its most terrifying and brilliant conclusion, yes. It has sold about 100 million copies.
Now, before we move on, we have to address the historical context of her writing when it comes to character descriptions.
This is a complex part of her legacy. We have to acknowledge that, especially in her works before 1945, she did use character descriptions that relied on what were, even then, offensive stereotypes.
Particularly concerning Italians, Jews, and non-Europeans.
Yes. The source material provides blunt examples. Descriptions like men of Hebraic extraction, sallow men with hooked noses, or calling a character a Whitechapel Jewess with dyed hair. It reflects the common, often prejudiced language of her era.
And this did attract formal complaints.
It did. In 1947, the Anti-Defamation League complained to her U.S. publishers. This led to her agent authorizing American publishers to omit the word Jew when it refers to an unpleasant character in future books. It was the beginning of a process of selective editing.
And that process has continued more recently.
Yes, since 2020, HarperCollins has edited reissues using sensitivity readers to remove passages with insults or references to ethnicity that modern audiences find offensive. It highlights that ongoing tension between preserving a historical text and making sure it remains accessible to a contemporary audience.
Christie's mastery also extended to the stage. This was born out of frustration with how her novels were being adapted, right?
She really disliked the adaptations, especially one of Roger Ackroyd. She decided she could protect the plot's integrity better if she did it herself. Her first original play, Black Coffee, premiered in 1930.
But the undisputed theatrical champion is, of course, The Mousetrap.
The Mousetrap premiered in 1952, and in a classic piece of understatement, Christie herself thought it would run for no more than 8 months.
She could not have been more wrong.
Not even close. It holds the world record for the longest initial run of any play in history. By 2018, it has staged its 27,500th performance. It's a piece of British cultural infrastructure.
And she achieved a unique status in the 1950s.
She became the first female playwright to have three plays running simultaneously in London's West End: The Mousetrap, Witness for the Prosecution, and Spider's Web.
She also published 6 non-mystery novels under a completely separate identity. Tell us about Mary Westmacott.
Mary Westmacott was her carefully guarded pseudonym. She needed this outlet to explore what she called her most private and precious imaginative garden, a place to write serious novels about human relationships completely outside the detective genre formula.
And critics at the time often gave these better
You
reviews.
did. Novels like Absent in the Spring got a warmer critical reception, which suggests how the mystery genre was sometimes dismissed back then. Her identity was kept secret for years until a journalist revealed it in 1949.
Finally, we should touch on the literary quality of her titles. She was constantly referencing canonical works.
This elevates her work. She drew titles from Shakespeare, like Sad Cypress, the Bible with Evil Under the Sun, and poets like Tennyson and T.S. Eliot.
And there's also that juxtaposition of innocence and horror in her use of nursery rhymes.
That is a hallmark of her genius. Her writing is like a modern fairy story for grown-up children. Titles like A Pocket Full of Rye or Hickory Dickory Dock use that unsettling contrast to immediately signal a dark, ritualistic framework for the crime.
So let's summarize the immense scale of her global legacy. The numbers become almost unbelievable.
She is, by any metric, an international icon. UNESCO lists her as the most translated individual author in the world.
And that reach translates into staggering sales.
More than 2 billion copies sold across 44 languages. And the sales are split pretty evenly, half in English and half in translation, which confirms her universal appeal.
Her total earnings from writing alone have been estimated at around $20 million, which is about $110 million in today's money.
And that's before the ongoing income from stage and screen adaptations. That success guaranteed a massive adaptations industry. Over 30 feature films have been based on her work.
Did she have a favorite during her lifetime?
She was reportedly very satisfied with the 1974 film of Murder on the Orient Express. More recently, the Kenneth Branagh films have kept her stories in modern cinemas.
But for many, her characters found their definitive form on television.
Television has been central to her modern fame. Agatha Christie's Poirot with David Suchet ran for 70 episodes and is widely seen as the definitive visual adaptation.
And the same for Miss Marple.
The series with Joan Hickson from 1984 to 1992 is celebrated for its faithful adaptation of all 12 Marple novels.
Her cultural status is even recognized by the state.
Absolutely. In 2020, the Royal Mint commemorated her with a £2 coin to mark the centenary of her first novel. She's recognized as a fundamental part of British cultural history.
So we've explored the duality of her life, from that privileged yet unconventional childhood to the severe emotional breakdown of 1926. We've traced her genius for crime through her mastery of toxicology and her global legacy, and we've seen how her meticulous plotting made the impossible plausible.
And if we connect all these elements, what stands out is not just her invention, but her rigorous commitment to structure, pattern recognition, and careful preparation. We've seen how her own life, from the poisons she dispensed to the archaeological digs she worked on, fueled her fiction. This raises an important final question for you to consider. We detailed her work on the digs, specifically her meticulous process of cleaning and restoring shattered ceramics. How did that very real, tangible experience, the painstaking reconstruction of broken fragments of distant history, not just inform, but fundamentally define her ability to reconstruct a perfect crime in reverse? It suggests that her greatest skill was not plotting murder, but performing the literary equivalent of an expert archaeological excavation, taking the scattered, seemingly meaningless fragments of human malice and reconstructing the precise, elegant truth of what happened.